Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate and a special two-part interview with the National Security Advisor M K Narayanan. Tomorrow I shall talk to Mr. Narayanan about his perception of the situation in Pakistan and the security implications for India. But first tonight, the Indo-US nuclear deal and the crisis in the Kashmir Valley. Mr. Narayanan, let's start with the Indo-US nuclear deal. Do you believe that the last NSG meeting in Vienna represented a delay, a setback, or a debacle for the Indo-US nuclear deal?
Certainly not a debacle. That I think is very clear. Nor do I think it was a setback. It was a pause, I think, in the program. But I think we were prepared for this because we had been told that it might be necessary to have 2 rounds before we could finalize something which would be mutually satisfactory.
Let me then ask you this. As you prepare for the second meeting on the 4th of September, which is just 6 days away, are you confident you can get a clean exemption from the NSG, or have your confidence levels dipped somewhat?
You know, we have gone through this program so many, through these efforts so many times. There are periods when you are highly elated. Sometimes you feel rather despondent. I think we are nearing the goal. Hopefully we shall breast the tape.
Are you optimistic? You don't sound it by your tone.
No, I'm optimistic, but I don't want to allow my optimism to override caution.
Now we're speaking on Friday evening. You're 6 days away from the next NSG meeting on the 4th. Has India been shown the new amended draft exemption?
Plausible deniability on these questions. This is work in progress. I can't tell you where exactly we are on this question.
Except for the fact that you're on Friday evening, there's the weekend coming up, and then it'll be Monday in just 3 days. If you haven't been shown the draft exemption, isn't it running very close?
Maybe running close, but I don't think we have much of a problem on that.
So you're confident that your concerns will be taken care of, even though you can't admit you've seen or not seen the draft exemption?
I mean, there's a constant dialogue which is going on between Delhi and Washington, and I think various people across. So I think we are fully aware of what's going on. So
the press has highlighted 3 concerns. The first is the requirement that some NSG countries are talking of for a condition which says that the exemption will terminate if India were to carry out further nuclear testing. Is there any way this could be reflected in the new amended exemption, or would it be a deal breaker in any shape or form for India?
I think you should give some credit to creative diplomacy in these matters. I presume that we'll find a way around it. Hopefully, I mean, till a deed is done, it's difficult to say yes. But I think it should be possible for us to surmount some of these obstacles.
You mentioned creative diplomacy. Could you accept the form of language that's used in the 123 if it were to be used in this new NSG draft? And I should point out for the audience that in the 123, there is no actual mention of the specific words nuclear testing. But could that formulation suffice for you?
Yeah, we have always made the point that testing is a word that we find difficult to adjust to, not because of anything else, but that's what Parliament has sort of mandated us to do. So I presume that testing would be difficult for us to. So we'll find ways around it.
Leave out testing, but the rest is okay.
No, we are clear that whatever we finally agree to with the NSG countries will be something that we can sell to Parliament. And
I think you've hinted at the sort of formulation. The 123 language, which doesn't mention testing, could be acceptable, provided, of course, it's acceptable to the others.
No, we hope that we can move forward on some of these issues.
A second condition mentioned by the NSG countries is that the exemption should exclude enrichment and reprocessing technologies. Now, given that India already has its own ENR technologies, can you live with that exclusion, or would that be a deal breaker?
No. In the case of the United States, they have certain conditions they have about the allowing enrichment and reprocessing technologies to countries. Now, in the case of the NSG, our case is different. We say that what we are asking, that the NSG does not have a ban on enrichment and reprocessing technologies per se. There is a broad sort of ban which the NSG has on various items with India, which includes any kind of nuclear commerce and related matters. What we are saying, if you are giving an exemption for those items, please give an exemption, because unlike the laws in the United States, none of the countries in the NSG countries have a kind of what I call a ban imposed in their countries on this kind.
So don't introduce a specific ban for India in this exemption.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want us to be singled out for this. What we have made clear, and this is what when all of us have gone out and talked to, if any country does not wish to sort of give us enrichment and reprocessing technologies and still wishes to have nuclear commerce, we'll draw up the guidelines according to that. What we do not want is each country's individual predilections forming part of a huge package of items in the NSG exemption.
Quite right. Let the NSG not take a position on this issue. Let individual countries, when we approach them, do it. Finally, there's also a demand for what's called a periodic review of India's compliance and India's behavior. Is that acceptable to you in any shape or form?
No, we believe that this is uncalled for. I mean, we have put all our cards on the table. We have been as transparent as anyone else. We are willing to make our case before the NSG. We do not understand what the need for a review mechanism. Principally not because of anything else, but this is a civil nuclear cooperation agreement. It involves commerce, it involves people investing money, countries investing money. It's a long-term commitment. They are putting in a lot of money for 30 years or 40 years. So if you have a review at the end of 3 years and somebody says, oh, well, this shouldn't be done, so nobody's going to invest in this now.
I understand.
Yeah.
You've made your position very clear on the testing issue, the ENR technology issue, and the periodic review concern. Does America agree with your positions, or do they have question marks? Worse still, do they have doubts about your position?
I think this question should be properly addressed to the United States, but I think we have carried conviction to them to the extent possible. I think they understand where we come from and that they would help us in the matter.
Let's focus a little on the United States' role. Do you believe that Washington did enough to prevent the naysayers from pushing amendments, or do you think that in fact Washington didn't take as hard a line as you would like it to have taken?
I think this is a dangerous question that you've asked me, but let me make the point. When we were negotiating with the United States, it was easier because the United States knew what it could give or what it could not give. We recognize that the United States is the preeminent world power. It is both militarily and economically, it's one of the dominating countries in the world. But I think even they have, some limits. There's always a case, can you do better? It's like preparing for an examination. If somebody can always say you could have prepared more. I personally think that a tremendous effort has been made by the United States to help us in this matter, as have countries like France, Russia, and others. Whether they could have done even more, but even after the first round is over, they are very actively involved. So frankly speaking, I have no complaints to make about it.
You're not criticizing them. You're accepting that they made terrific efforts, but you're holding open the possibility that they could have done more.
I mean, like in everything else, could I have made a better case before all these people? I've just been cautious because somebody would then pick up and say X, Y, or Z. But I think in as much as they have done in most other cases, I think they have done their best.
There is a view in the press that the American ambassador's repeated assertion that India's requirement or insistence on an unconditional exemption is both inappropriate and provocative. There's also been the position taken by Howard Berman, the chairman of the House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee, actually telling Condoleezza Rice not to go ahead with exemptions that would in some way circumvent the Hyde Act. Has all of that been unhelpful?
No, I think the U.S. ambassador in Delhi has been an extremely positive factor in the whole thing.
So the press has wrongly picked on him?
Yeah, picked. I mean, I think they have a love-hate relationship, I think, with prominent U.S. diplomats, so I suppose this is one of them. But I mean, I have interacted with Ambassador Mulford for the last 4 years very closely. I think he's done a tremendous job, and I think few ambassadors would have put so much effort as he has done. Yes, sometimes the statements that he makes make people a little annoyed and upset, but I think I suppose much the same can be said about me, so it's par for the course.
Let me put it like this. If the NSG were to grant you a clean exemption on the 4th and 5th of September, but if the chairman of the NSG alongside were to make a statement listing a prescriptive list of suggestions, not conditions, but suggestions. Could India live with that?
Well, I presume it would be the chairman's prerogative to make what he, state what he likes. But as long as those are not laid down as conditions, we have talked in terms of a clean exemption and unconditional exemption. We have not said that there should be no whisper about what anybody wishes to say. So, we are not sort of behaving by like a sort of a 16-year-old. You know, we recognize that countries have problems. If the chairman is making a statement which reflects to some extent some of those points, maybe, but as long as it doesn't inhibit us from what we believe is a clean and unconditional exemption.
My final question on this issue: has India made it clear to countries like Austria, Switzerland, New Zealand, some of the Scandinavian countries and Ireland that if they insist upon imposing unacceptable conditions, this would have a damaging impact on their bilateral relationship with New Delhi?
No. As far as I'm aware, we have not done any arm twisting in this. For that matter, I think several countries, Russia, for instance, have actually offered to help us with Austria. So they are doing most of the talking. I don't think we have tried what I would call unscrupulous or underhand methods to pressurize.
But you're not suggesting that the Austrians or the Irish or the Swiss could think that they could impose conditions which you can't accept, and there would be no damage to the bilateral relationship?
You should ask them, because I mean, that would. But I don't think we are making that the touchstone for a relationship. It's important. I presume if somebody is very friendly with us, they would certainly get a benefit as somebody who's less friendly with us.
Let's take a break there, Mr. Narayanan. I want to come back and talk to you about what's considered the crisis in the Kashmir Valley. That's in a moment's time. Don't go away. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an exclusive two-part interview with the National Security Advisor, M K Narayanan. Mr. Narayanan, let's turn to what's happening in the Kashmir Valley. We've seen lakhs of people coming out demanding Azadi, carrying slogans, shouting, Jeeve Jeeve Pakistan or Bharat Teri Maut Hai, and often the administration just stands by and does nothing. As National Security Advisor, how serious is the situation in the valley?
I think far less serious than what is being portrayed, but at the same time certainly is something that we are very unhappy about.
Why do you say far less serious?
Well, I mean, people have started, I mean, comparing it with the 1990s and whatnot. Certainly the situation is nowhere in that. But what is causing us concern is that 4 years of what I say improvement in the situation, belief that we had reduced levels of alienation. There were substantial signs of normalcy in the state. People had forgotten about issues that had no major concern other than the day-to-day problems of living, better electricity, internet connections, etc. Suddenly seem to have been sort of pushed into the background, and mobs have come out on the street.
Pushed into the background, or actually does all that now look illusory? People say that during those last 4 years, when Kashmir looked as if it was approaching normalcy, the government took its eye off the ball, it became complacent, it discontinued talks with Hurriyat, and today, in a sense, you're reaping the harvest of negligence.
No, I mean, unlike what these people say, I don't think the Hurriyat is the principal voice in the valley. We recognize that Hurriyat has a certain voice, but I think there are mainstream political parties. We have been having elections since 2000, well, even before 2000.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Is it not even worse than that? Hasn't it become a spontaneous movement with hundreds of thousands coming out, not under the Hurriyat control, certainly not under PDP and National Conference control? The people seem to have developed a mood, and it's a mood for Azadi or secessionism.
No, I think I would beg to disagree on this point. I think what really, I mean, there was an agitation over the issue of what was wrongly referred to as handing over of land or diversion of land, when actually what was being done was user rights, but perhaps it was not necessary. It was an uncalled for, what should I say, mistake which probably
But today
occurred.
it's snowballed way beyond Amarnath.
But then Amarnath, then it got down. I think that it was the blockade on the national highway which produced a certain concern in the valley.
So you accept there was a blockade?
for a day and a half there was some disruption of traffic. So when it wasn't a total blockade, but there was disruption. The truck traffic dropped on the kind. If there was, say, let us say 100 trucks going, it came down to about 15 to 20, but it was just for a day and a half. And today it's back to about 85 to 90%.
And then there was the shooting when the Muzaffarabad march was first attempted.
Yeah, but I'm on record on saying that we would like to know who did the shooting. It wasn't done by the...
Who do you think did? You've raised questions about it. If it wasn't the police, as the press has assumed,
this is the concern even amongst the Hurriyat and others, saying that who is now amongst us who's trying to eliminate some of us.
You're saying that the Hurriyat accept that it wasn't the police who did the shooting?
I think they will never admit it, I suppose. But the fact of the matter, it is certainly not the police. He was shot in the back. So
you're talking about Sheikh Abdul Aziz.
I'm only talking
do you have
about
any idea who it might have been?
Oh, well, you'll know at the right time, I presume, when we are sure of who it is or which group was responsible. But
does the finger point across the border of Pakistan?
No, we have no facts at the moment about A or B or C. What we are clear at the moment is that this was not the police.
But if you have no facts, how can you be clear it's not the police?
Because I mean, there are a lot of things with circumstances. I mean, he was shot in the back. He was in the front. He could not have been shot in the back by the police who are in front. I mean, there are certain ways that you can be sure how a thing was done. Now you can find any number of excuses, but the fact of the matter is, it may not be relevant in so many matters, but the fact of the matter is that he is not a martyr to the cause that he's being made out.
He was murdered, and he was murdered perhaps by people who had a motive personally against him.
Yes, and it's not the first time that this has happened.
Have you discovered the bullet? Have you done any autopsy to back this up?
They took the body away. We didn't have a chance for a post-mortem, because then the facts would have been much clearer.
Let me raise another issue with you. People say that there's no doubt that the last 4 years, culminating in the summer of 2008, were perhaps the best since 1990. But if Kashmir could blow up in such vast numbers so easily, it clearly suggests that the valley was simmering all along, and no one in government either appreciated, or worst, no one in government realized.
No. You know, I think it has not been very difficult to close down the valley from time to time. You know, I think it's always been possible to sort of close up the valley from particularly from parts of the valley. Srinagar town, for instance, Baramulla, Bandipur and whatnot. But that's, I mean, what a cold comfort, I would say. The fact of the matter is that the concern about the blockade could have brought so many people out into the street is a matter of concern for us, that people do nurse concerns saying that are we likely to feel sort of bottled up or not. And that is why we are placing so much emphasis on reducing the agitation in the Jammu region, because as long as that agitation persists, the danger or the likelihood of crowds coming onto the national highway
except that now the blockade is 3 weeks old. Even the shooting on the Muzaffarabad march is 2.5 to 3 weeks old. But you still don't have normal life. For 10 days, Kashmir and 10 districts, not just 1 or 2, have been under curfew. That's a clear sign that if you don't have a curfew, you won't have control.
Yeah, because we gave about, you know, there was a period, the Muzaffarabad Chalo, then there was the sort of 1 or 2 other ones relating to the funeral processions.
So you've had to keep the curfew?
We kept, no, first we allowed a lot of movement across. We did not, there was no effort by the administration to interfere with that, so that there was, a new issue comes up on the kind. But when the Lal Chowk Chalo came up, and the feeling was that now these people are moving from what could be concerns, worries and problems into really a problem of trying to build up the Azadi. That's when the crackdown took place.
Let me put it like this. When do you think Kashmir will return to anything like a semblance of normalcy?
Well, we are hopeful that this could be achieved in the next, week to 10 days.
As soon as that?
Yes.
A week or 10 days?
Yes.
You could have Srinagar going back to what it was like in June?
Maybe it may not be, may not be June, but just I mean, signs of normalcy in the sense of what you can.
All right, Mr. Ryan, let's end this particular interview there. Tomorrow I want to talk to you about your perception of what's happening in Pakistan and the security implications for India. That's tomorrow night on CNBC TV 18 at 10:30 p.m. But for tonight, goodbye, good night.